turn things around a little bit here. I hope that you all had a wonderful celebration, Christmas and New Year's, everything now behind us. And here we are on the very first Sabbath of this 2021. And we're hoping that it's going to be a better year, because 2020 is a year that I think without exception, everyone in the world can agree that it's a year that will go down in infamy. It's a year that has been very, very tough. It didn't hardly bring anything as in terms of globally any good news. And it well nigh just almost overwhelmed the many good things that God was and is still doing for each and every one of us. So yeah, we shall overcome at last. We shall. And once again, it is my humble opportunity and privilege here to share a word with you on this Sabbath. And I don't want to, without much ado, I just would like for us to get into the Word of God. My sermon title today, Believe and Conquer. Believe and conquer. Let us pray. Father in heaven, without you, I can do nothing. Without you, the most careful preparation, dear Lord, is futile. And so for that reason, I pray, dear Lord, that the message that you have inspired, that you will now grant the power to deliver. I also pray for the people for whom the elder has already prayed, asking, Lord, that you would now enable us, dear Lord, to be able to be attentive and to be able to be blessed together today. For it is in Christ's name we ask these things. Amen. I'd like for you to turn with me to the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers, chapter 14. Actually, Numbers 13 is what we want. Numbers 13, let's start with verse 27 of this book of Numbers. It is so named because there's a lot of numbers in the book of Numbers. There's a lot of census taking, there's a lot of details having to do with numbers. And so it is aptly named. Numbers, again, chapter 13 and verse 27. The context here is a well-known story. The children of Israel have been traveling through the desert now for just a few months since they left Egypt. And they come to this place where they are ready to enter the land of Canaan. Yes, you heard that right. Just a few months after they left the promised land, they were ready to enter the promised land and to take it. And God began to number them, to organize them in order to enter the promised land. But the children were doubtful, and they suggested that a number of men be sent into the promised land, into this land to view it. Yes, you heard that right. They, the children of Israel, actually pretty much asked that if Moses would send spies into the land before they went in. We call that unbelief, because God has brought them all the way. He's about to lead them into the promised land just a few months after they left Egypt, but they didn't believe him. So they suggested that a number of men be sent into this land to spy it and to come back and give a report. You can find that in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1. For that information that I just gave, they're the ones, the people. It wasn't God's idea, it was the people. And so they sent these 12 spies, one from each tribe, And we're told that the spies went into the land and they viewed it and they spied it for 40 days. And then they returned to the camp. And when they came back, they made their way all the way to their leader, Moses, and they gave the following report. We'll pick up the story now in verse 27. And if you want to start in verse 26 there, it says here, and they went, and they came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him and said, we came unto the land whither you sent us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people are strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there, and the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. Let's stop there for a minute. These men, whom we know today to be the 10 of the 12 spies, came and said, well, you know, it's a great land. Yeah, they brought that famous fruit, one cluster of grapes carried on a pole between two men on a shoulder. Huge cluster of grapes, just one cluster of grapes. What you and I usually buy at Safeway or Costco or wherever we go, and you know, we buy several clusters in a little plastic can. They came with one cluster on a pole carried by two men. I say it's great. It's really wonderful. And the first part of their report is great. Yes, it flows with milk and honey, but they said the people that dwell in the land, they are strong. They are giants. When they said, mid reference to the children of Anak, those were giants. And the cities are walled and very great. Moreover, you know, it said we saw these giants there. And then they proceeded to enumerate the Amalekites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Canaanites. They all lived there. It says they're strong. They are strong. Now, I want you to know that this right here is pretty sad, especially in the context of us knowing that God, 3 months after they left the land of Egypt, God told them, He made it very, very clear, I'm taking you to a land that has 7 nations that are stronger than you. They're stronger than you, but I'm leading you. I'll take you there. In fact, I'd like for us to put our finger right there. We'll come back right here. Go to the book of Exodus. When you find Exodus, I'd like for us to go to chapter 23. Okay? Remembering here, as we're turning, that faith, my friends, comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of the Lord. So faith really comes by hearing what God says. What you do when God speaks, what you do next really shows where you and I are with Him. If God says something, it is so. It's the same God who said, let there be light in the beginning, and there was light. The same God who spoke, and it was, who commanded, and it stood fast, is the same God that spoke to the Israelites and said to them, I am leading you. I am going to guide you into the promised land. And yes, there's going to be all of these obstacles, but I am the one leading you. It's the same God who leads you and I today. And going now to the book of Exodus, chapter 23, beginning with verse 20. Notice what God says. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. If you have studied the scriptures well, this angel is none other than Christ Himself. Okay? I'm sending an angel. He's going to go with you. You all remember that there was a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. That's how the God of Israel, the Son of God, manifested Himself, His presence to them both day and night. And then in verse 21, beware of him, this angel, and obey his voice. Do not provoke him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But thou, if thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak unto you, then I will be an enemy to thine enemies and an adversary to your adversary. For mine angel shall go before thee and bring thee into the land of the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and Canaanites and Hivites and Jebusites, and I will cut them off. This is God. This is you don't have to worry anything. I don't want you to complain. I don't want you to murmur. In fact, I'm going to give you a very clear evidence that I am the one leading you, and I'm going to make sure that this evidence is manifest both day and night. I am the one that's going to cut them off. All right, verse 27. I will send my fear before thee, and I will destroy the people to whom thou shalt come, and I will make of thine enemies. I will make thine enemies, all thine enemies, turn their backs on thee. And I, notice this, will send hornets before thee, that they shall drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, the Hittites from thee. I will drive them out. Notice this. I will do that. I will do that. There was no reason for these spies to doubt anything. Yeah, okay, we found the Hittites, the Canaanites. Okay, that's not news. Oh, we found the giants. That's not news. Okay. Now, going back to our narrative in the book of Numbers, return there, chapter 13. We're now going to look at verse 30, okay? And this is the happy news here. And Caleb stilled, that means he calmed the people. Why is he calming them? Because there's already an uproar. As soon as the 10 spies gave the bad report, they talked about the Hivites and all the giants, and the land that swallows up its inhabitants. Everybody just was in an uproar. Imagine this. You got 2 million people in the wilderness, and none of them at this time is thinking for themselves. As soon as the report was made, they all began to they came apart. They became undone. Caleb now stills the people, notice this, before Moses and said, let us go at once. Let us go in at once. This is Caleb. And possess it. Notice this, for we are well able to overcome it. He didn't just say, I think we can do it. He says, we are more than capable of doing it. Now notice this. These two verses sitting right next to each other. You and I today, my brothers and sisters, find ourselves in the way that we live from day to day in either one of these camps. Caleb says we are well able to do it. We are well able to overcome it. Now notice verse 31. But the men that went up with him said, we are not able. One said, we are able. The other said, we're not. Caleb says we are very well able. 10 spies says, no, we cannot. So now you have 2 men, and the other man here that's not mentioned right now in this particular verse is Joshua. Both Joshua and Caleb said, we can do this. 10 men said we cannot. You know what's so sad? The words of each proved true. The words of each proved true. If I was to end here and that was the only sermon you heard today, you would have been at least reminded with emphasis as to what would you like to do. Because by your words, my friends, you will be either condemned or justified. We don't need to be told, but while the cowards died in the desert during the 40 years, both Joshua and Caleb ate of the grapes of Eshcol. Remember that cluster that they brought, where they walked around that land? These 2 men made it in. Why? Simply because when God said it, they believed it. When God spoke, they simply did what you and I and any one of us can do: choose to believe. Choose to believe. You know, I struggled with how to title this sermon. I ended up, I finally said, believe and conquer. I was struggling because I was thinking, how can I title this? Because it has so much today to do with, number one, what is in your mind and what you allow yourself to speak. What's in your mind and what you allow yourself to speak. Because now, if it is in your mind, you will speak it. Because out of the abundance of the heart, their mouth will speak. These 10 spies, when they went there, they chose to look. The land was so good, but they allowed the challenges and the difficulties that lay in the way of its conquering to daunt their faith. Now, you're probably wondering, what does it have to do with us? Well, the Bible says that these things happen to them as object lessons for us who are living upon the ends of the ages. We too have a promised land. And I think that we can today, more than any other time, we can all acknowledge that there are giants that are lying upon our way. We even right now, in the very morning of this brand new year, there are so many challenges before which many are tempted to cower. Are we really indeed able to go forward? Are we able to conquer? Yes, what do we choose to do? I am not saying this because, I am just so strong in faith. It is just a choice that I'm making that every one of us can make today. And I say, yes, we are more than able to conquer. Why? Because our God says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Nay, he said better than that. He says, I am with you always, all the way, even to the end of the world. You see, our God is the same yesterday and the same today, and he will be the same tomorrow. You ask, why doesn't he send a cloud in front of us and a pillar of fire by night? No, he doesn't need to do that because he's already said it. He's come in person. And we know that he has come. He has died for us on the cross. And he has said, I will never leave you. I am with you always. Even when you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I am with you. Fear no evil, because I am with you, and my rod and my staff will comfort you. Wait a minute. What is the evidence today that God is with us? His rod and his staff. God's dealings with us today prove to us that he is with us. Every child I receive, I chasten. That's what you use a rod for. So the rod, the correction, and the chastening of the Lord today is our cloudy pillar. It's two ways. Let me tell you something, two ways real quickly now. This is just coming to me in my mind right now. I also want to share with you real quickly. Every one of us, it's human to want to have an easy path, It's an easy. If we had to choose, if I had to choose, I would choose an easy path. I would not choose. I would not want a path that is so full of obstacles here and there and difficulties. But the examples are there in the scriptures. The experiment has been done. You all know? And right now, I'm thinking of David and Solomon. David was the king, and Solomon was the king. David was the father. Solomon was the son. Now, David, his preparation when he was anointed, from the time he was anointed to the time that he was king, that whole path to the throne was marked with difficulties, with challenges. Let me tell you something, from the time that he was anointed, we all know that he went to Saul's, palace there as a little boy. He started, he was requested by the king to play for him. And the king discovered that as David played for him, the spirits that troubled him would go away and all of that. He loved him, like initially, just like one of his own children. And so God now allowed him, God actually providentially led David to play for him so that he can be in the palace, so that he can get to see, because now this is a boy. Look, today in politics, we hear when somebody is running for president, if they haven't had a experience in politics and all of that, the opponents bring that up. Oh, no, they're too green behind the ears. They've not even been in public service. How are they going to rule? I mean, Obama actually met, he had some of those obstacles to surmount. And David didn't have that. So what did God do to him? He said, okay, you know what? I'm going to providentially make arrangements for you to be in the palace and play for the king. But while you're there, you're going to get to see behind the scenes how, the king, does his business. So he would see people come in, he would see how the king would deal with them, how he, either justified, or condemned, people and all of that and everything. He got to see that. He also got to see and to realize, which some of us don't because we are not royalty, that look, behind all that glitter, there is all kinds of problems. Saul had it all. I remember the doctor out in Weimar, I forget his name. What's our doctor in Weimar? What's his name? Dr. Nedley. Dr. Nedley did a sermon once that I'll never forget. And he talked about, this man, Saul had everything that we today want. Because you know what, a lot of us, I'm talking now from a human standpoint, everybody wants to be either beautiful or handsome physically. Everybody wants to be tall. Everybody wants to be rich. Everybody wants to be popular. Everybody wants to have power. He had it all. But David found firsthand that all behind all of that glitter, there is pain that all of that cannot take away. And then David began, we know that he started chasing him. And he went out in the wilderness, and the nature of the character of the people that were around him, everyone that was distressed, everyone that was in debt, all of these people coming to him. These are the kind of people that he's surrounded with. Now, that's not the making, at least in our minds today, of royalty. That's not how you get prepared. No. You get Secret Service, all of that and everything. That's how the world does its thing. Not the person who would become the most popular, most loved king in all the history of the Bible. He's going through all of that. And let me tell you something, when he came to the throne, David now knew how to treat those who were poor, those who were in debt. He knew how to have mercy on those. He just knew that. David knew that. And except for the one sin that mars his life, this man, no wonder, becomes the man after God's own heart. Now, in contrast, his son Solomon, brought up in royalty, brought up in wealth, he had all of this, none of those challenges. Now, this is the man. Now, if you think of Solomon and how he grew up, that's how we would love to grow up. That's how we want. This is the path that we want leading up to the kingdom, because we too are anointed. And from the time that we are anointed with the Holy Spirit until we reign with Christ as kings, guess what? Our path to that throne is beset like that of David, with many vicissitudes in life, hardly nothing good. Things start going well and you're happy and you're praising God, and all of a sudden things just out of nowhere. Your career that was so good and all of that and everything, all of a sudden now it's in the balance. Your health sometimes that you're enjoying, that gets interrupted. Your children that were doing so well and all of that and everything, all of a sudden, there's no telling what's going on. Everything is in disarray and we are ready to despair. But Solomon, everything was so smooth. He stepped from being a prince to being a king. But need I retell his story today? He didn't have that discipline, and so he fell. How does God make kings? I think Elder John preached a sermon that I don't want to repeat. But these men right here, Caleb and Joshua, they're here now and they're saying, no, we are well able to do this. The other guys, they're saying, no, we cannot do this. There's too many difficulties lying between us and the kingdom and the possession that God gave us. Like many of us today, these men were ready to go back into Egypt. In fact, look at this. It says here, we are not able, verse 31, to go up against this people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we had gone through to search it is a land that eats up its inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw there were men of great stature. Verse 33, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come from the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. You have got to wonder, where is the God of Israel in their reckoning at this moment? Where is the one who says, there is none like me? Where's the one who says, I'm going to send my angel in front of you and I'm going to cut them out? Where is he in their reckoning? Wow, 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 wow. So what is the matter? Now, think about this now, my friends. It says here, verse 14, chapter 14, and all the congregation, this is the effect. This is the effect of the example of the 10 spies. And as we're reading this, I want you to know today, in the way that you look at life, and in the way that you're going, there's never an action, there's never a step that you take, but that is not affecting other people. In fact, we're told, and I believe this, and I found this to be true by experience, that there is no one living today that does not cast an influence around him or her for good or for bad. It can never be in between. As we live, we're casting an example, whether we know it or whether we don't, but for weal or for woe, we're told. Your example in how you carry yourselves, in how you go about life, is actually casting out a ripple effect and is affecting those around you. Notice the effect on the congregation. We are talking about 2 million people in the wilderness. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried. And the people wept that night. You're wondering, is anybody going to go back there and open their Bible and talk to God and say, you know what, God, what we heard tonight was really discouraging. You know, what can we do? What time I'm afraid? I will trust in thee. I mean, you know what? And, and they didn't even have to do all of that, because all they had to do was go out there in the night and they see that there's a pillar of fire standing there in front of them. And that pillar of fire should have reminded them of what God did to Pharaoh and all of his host. They had reminders all around about them of the God, ever-present God of Israel around them, but they chose, in spite of that, to doubt him. And it says, and all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said unto them, would to God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God that we had died in this wilderness. My, oh my. This is so sad. Listen here to this, what I think is wonderful quotes coming from a book called Voice and Speech and Song. And it says this. This has to do with exaggerated speech, because what these guys are doing, they're exaggerating. The land doesn't swallow its inhabitants. Well, you look like grasshoppers in front of anybody. I don't care how tall somebody is. Even if they were 20 feet, you would have to be like something like an inch tall to look like a grasshopper to a 20-foot person. And we know there's never existed a 20-foot person. Listen to this. Our thoughts produce our words. I want to do this very deliberately. Our thoughts produce our words, and our words react upon our thoughts. If a man forms the habit of using sacred words reverently, he will form the custom of carefulness of speech, knowing that there is a witness to every word uttered. Now, you all remember what I said earlier. I quoted Matthew chapter 12. By your words, you'll be justified. By your words, you'll be condemned. Okay? Now, notice this. If our words act upon ourselves, notice this, they act more powerfully upon others. There is a great mischief done by words spoken. God alone knows and measures the result of a careless, exaggerated mode of speaking. These guys are saying, oh man, you know what? When they did this, if they had just come in and said, imagine, without exaggeration, they said, you know what? Yeah, they're pretty tall people there. Okay, without saying that, it swallows its inhabitants and all of that, and that we look like grasshoppers. They say, the cities are tall, yeah, and there's some pretty tall people there. That in of itself wouldn't have carried, made the desired effect that they wanted to. So basically, God is also looking at the intention here. And notice this. The Bible says in Proverbs 27, verse 7, As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. As you and I think in our hearts, so we are. Can we do something about the way we think? Yes. Why? Because the mind usually becomes like what it looks at. That's a loose translation. You become like what you look at. You become like what you focus on. You become like it. And if that's true, you might as well just focus. If you focus on God, that's why the Bible says, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full, that's a song, in his wonderful face, and the things of this world will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and his grace. So we become like what we do. Let me tell you something. If we train ourselves to look at sports and listen to sports and start looking at, whoa, you know, so and so, we have all these stats of all these people and all of that. Now, we become like that. That's great in our sight. And when we do that, guess what? Correspondingly, God becomes smaller and human beings become big. Whatever it is that you're looking at becomes bigger. It looms larger. That's just how it is. But when we look away from our problems to God and get to know who he is, let me tell you something. Our problems somehow look so small. Has anybody ever felt, any one of you ever tried this when you're so discouraged because you're going through something, maybe at work or something, somebody's mistreating you and all of that, and you're just ready to give up. And then you just, probably not all of you have tried this, but if you haven't tried, but those who have, then you go study like Matthew 27. And you just read it slowly and you see what Christ went through. How does that make your problems look? How does that make it? I mean, this is not one of us who can not admit that when you look at the way Christ was treated and you read word for word, a scripture, verse by verse, man, oh man, your own problems look so small. In fact, if you study it as you should, you actually are ashamed of yourself. You know, for thinking your problems are so big. So it would do us well to heed that admonition that every day spend some thoughtful moments reviewing the last moments of Christ's life here on earth. It will make our problems seem very, very small. And then also we are encouraged that he has gone through it before us, and he now offers to come back and say, okay, now, all right, now, back where you are. I have walked all the way. I'm going to walk with you now. And I know every step of the way. When you walk through the fire, you're not going to be burnt. Hey, through the rivers, I'll make sure that you're not going to be overflowed. You know, no weapon that is formed against you will prosper. And every tongue that dares to rise in opposition against you, you will condemn. You know, as you begin to think about this, you know, your problems seem small. But if we focus too much on other stuff, you know, those things become big in our lives. You know, become big in our lives. If you allow yourself to focus on just, you know, people and their wealth and who's, you know, who has so much money and who has how much and who's today making how many billions and all of that, those people loom large, and the glitter and all of that pretty soon, without knowing, that's what you want. And you forget that the gold that they have, that they're wearing, and that they have in the bank is what God has ordained that you will walk on in heaven. Amen. Now, so they were murmuring. These were just a bunch of people murmuring. Okay? And we know the story. I don't want to read it all. You can go home and read it. Because you know what? Caleb and Joshua continued to remonstrate with them. Please don't rebel against God. In fact, if you go to verse 8 and 9, it's really touching here. It says, if the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land and he will give it to us. Notice he is giving it to us. A land that flows with milk and honey. Only rebel not. You know what? This ancient language here, our modern English language, you know, sometimes is limited. We can see them begging them, please, just don't rebel. Didn't he say he's going to lead us? Look at what he's done. You know, he led us through the Red Sea. Look at what he did to Pharaoh. Don't do this. He promised. I'm sure, you know, the Bible says that, you know, not all things that, you know, happen are written. If they were, even the whole world could not contain the books that would be written. So I can imagine them saying, look at the pillar out there, guys. What do you think that is? Who do you think that is? Only rebel not against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of this land. Notice this. This is faith. They are bread for us. They are bread for us, and their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. They are bread. There's nothing. This is faith, guys. Every one of us can speak like this. Even if you don't feel it, train yourself to speak like this. Because what? We just learned that words react on our thoughts. You know, when you learn to become discouraged and speak discouragement, you become discouraged. Let me tell you something, and I know a lot of you can actually nod. You know, the difference between people who have faith and people who seem strong is not because they're strong. The difference is that those who are strong are always choosing to believe positive. Can I have somebody just doing this? The people who are strong, who appear to be strong, it's not because, oh, they feel strong and they're also confident. No, no, they just make a choice. God said it, that's what I'm going to believe. And I'm going to act out what I want. And so let me tell you something. You make a habit of doing this. Next thing you know, those words react on your thoughts and you actually begin to feel confident. There's nothing wrong with confidence in the Lord. The Bible says, cast not away, therefore, your confidence. Why? Because the confidence, it has great recompense of reward. For you have need of patience, that after you have done the will of God, you might receive the promise. Everyone, even Abraham, the father of our faith, if you read Hebrews chapter 7, after he had patiently endured, he received the promise. Every one of us has to endure. And the enduring of the things and the vicissitudes that come your way, that is the clearest evidence that God is preparing you to be a queen and a king and a princess and a prince in heaven to reign with him. Brethren, we have a good land. If they had a good land, man, eye has not seen, nor has ear heard the things that God has prepared for us. What Caleb said to the people, I will say to us, don't rebel by allowing yourself to be discouraged and to say discouraging things. Let me tell you something. You can say discouraging things even while you don't know it. You say, well, I don't know I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready to get in. As if there's a time in the future that you're going to be ready. Ask yourself, what are you going to look then? In your mind, what are you expecting you're going to look when you're ready? If you woke up this morning and you consecrated yourself to God and you reconsecrated yourself, you are ready today if he should come or if something, God forbid, should happen to you today. I have seen, my friends, witness so many people dying and then dead. So many I can't even count. I've witnessed people who weren't even quite ready, who didn't even know God before. Check this out. And I walk up to them, I say, squeeze my hand if you want me to pray for you. Okay? I'm not only a nurse, I'll tell them, but I'm also a minister, and I can pray for you today. And I believe that if you want me to pray for you, and if you agree with me as I'm praying with you, I can guarantee you, based on God's word, that you're going to be like the thief on the cross, you're going to be with him in paradise. I have seen people squeeze my hand, and I've prayed for them. I've seen tears come down their eyes, and I know without a shadow of a doubt, when I left that home, that person is going to be with God in heaven at some point. You mean to tell me that person not knowing God, all that time I walk in, I tell them they believe just like the thief on the cross, they're going to be in heaven, but you have been serving God. You've known him for these many years, but somehow you just don't know if he should come today, if you're ready. We need to start speaking faith. It's not presumption. When Caleb said, we are well able. We are well able. We are well able. Start to speak. Let me tell you something. Listen to this. This is cool. This is coming from the book, A Christ Object Lessons. Never allow yourself to speak in a hopeless, discouraging way. Never allow yourself to speak. Notice the word is allow. That's the operative word because it's just a choice. We choose. When we speak like this, we're allowing it. We're choosing to talk that way. Never allow yourself to speak in a discouraging way. If you do, you lose much. You see what those people lost? We're about to see what they lost and why. It says here, by looking at appearances and complaining when difficulties, pressure come, you give evidence of a sickly and enfeebled faith. And then this: talk and act as if your faith was invincible. Talk and act. That's not pride. No, faith is only as good as the object on which it is placed. If your faith is in God, then talk and act as if nothing is impossible. Why? Because he says, look, nothing shall be impossible to you. All things that you desire when you pray, believe that you have them, and you shall have them. This is the confidence that we have in him. If we ask anything according to his will, stop. Is it God's will to give us the kingdom? It's not only God's will, it is his good pleasure to give us the kingdom. If you ask anything according to his will, we know that our petitions are heard. And if we know that our petitions are heard, we know that we have the petitions which we desire of him. So if you desire to be in heaven, man, see yourself there. When problems come, start seeing yourself. Imagine yourself, lose yourself in heaven, seeing yourself there. It is a fact. You're going to be there. If you speak and act, we are well able. Guys, start speaking positively. Amen. Speak positively. Why? It doesn't cost anything. It's going to react on you. Start speaking like that. Pretty much you start feeling like that. Feelings are not bad as long as they are not the engine, they're the caboose. Okay? Feelings are not bad as long as they are the result of your faith. How do you feel when you're a child of God? That makes you feel good. Nothing wrong with that. Don't let feelings lead, but let them catch up. And when they catch up, embrace them. Just hug them. Sometimes we become so painfully indefinite that we're afraid if we even say something, we're just afraid. That's being painfully indefinite. We are children of the King. Amen? Now, I want you to notice something here as we're moving. I want you to go to chapter 14, verse 26 and 28. They have been speaking all along, and now God is going to speak. And I want you to notice carefully how God draws his conclusion. All right? Verse 26. And the Lord spake unto Moses and said unto Aaron, and he said, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation, which murmur against me? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against me. Now, before I go to verse 28, I want to say something about murmuring. You know what murmur means? That word means to grumble discontentedly. It means to complain. You know what else it means? I looked this up. In the Greek language, it means that, no, in the Hebrew language, it means to lodge or remain, to pass the night. To lodge or remain and to pass the night. Let's put it together. When you grumble and complain, you're not making progress. You're stuck in the same place. And the danger of being stuck in the same place is that more often than not, you will start returning when you're done complaining. You're not going to move forward. Is that what they did? If it hadn't been for God, notice what goes on in verse 28. It says here, and this is chapter 14, 9, verse 28. Say unto them, as truly as I live, says the Lord, as you have spoken in my ears, so will I do to you. Are words powerful? What do you want God to do for you? Start speaking that which you want to see happen in your life. I want to be very careful. I'm not speaking about word of faith, all of that nonsense that we have some preachers speaking today, that if you just pass by a Mercedes-Benz dealership, just speak it and it's yours. That's nonsense. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about God's will in your life. If you know that it's his will in your life, then believe it. Amen. Align yourself with him and then believe it. Because all things whatsoever you desire when you pray, believe that you have them, but they stop there. The Bible says, if you do ask anything according to my will, I will do it. So make sure it's God's will. Amen. Now, but I mentioned about murmuring. Murmuring also means to abide, to remain and pass the night in a certain place. So when you're complaining and murmuring, you're not making progress. Okay. Now, If you go back to verse 4 of chapter 14, notice what the complainers now are doing, the murmurings. And they said one to another, let us make a captain and do what? When you murmur and lodge in one place, when you finally make up your mind to start moving, it's usually going back, because now you can't go forward. There are giants in front of you. So it's preferable now, according to that logic, okay, to go back and become a slave. Let's go back to our slavery. It's a better place to be there, okay? Subject ourselves again to an indefinite time because we're too scared to go forward. We're going to leave God standing right there in the form of a pillar and in the form of a cloud and go back to Pharaoh. Wow. I think that the point is pretty clear here. The point is pretty clear. We know that our words are very powerful, my friends, okay? And I'd like for you to go with me to book of 2 Kings chapter 7 on our way to Hebrews, where we're going to stop, okay? 2 Kings 7, go there with me. I want to show you something. I'm just encouraging you to do what is just so, guys, it's a choice. Make a choice to be positive. Make a choice to think positively. You know, your thoughts become your words, and your words become your actions, and your actions sooner or later become your character. Start with the thoughts. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. So take care of your hearts. Isn't that what it says? Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. It's the heart. You know, don't become like a computer that sits there with no antivirus software. Everything that comes in, you just suck in. No, filter everything. Filter stuff. Say, wait a minute, where did that come from? I'm not going to allow that to come in. You know, yeah, it may seem like weakness, but no, wait a minute. What does God say about this? Okay, all right, then it's not clear, then I'm going to put it right there before I admit it. I'm going to put it on the side until I know what to do with it, but I'm not going to admit it. In 2 Kings chapter 7, this is a story that we're not going to read all the story. I'm just going to tell you all about it. You real quickly, take like, 5 minutes, and then we'll move on. There is a huge famine in Samaria. Huge famine, such as, unparalleled, huge. But it's happening in the times of Elisha the prophet, who succeeded Elijah. Okay? And here on the first two verses, we're going to go in the first two verses, and then we're going to go on the last verses, because you can read the story when you get home. Elisha said, hear the word of the Lord. I mean, it was so bad, women were cooking their dead children and eating them. And they would say something like, your child looks like he's not going to make it. We might have them just cook him today. And they would say things like, we're going to eat yours today, and we'll eat mine tomorrow. That's how bad it was. Okay? And so Elisha shows up. Again, notice when God speaks. And he said, thus saith the Lord. He didn't say, this is what I'm thinking. This is what God says. Tomorrow, about this time, okay, he gives a definite time. About this time, a measure of flour shall be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria. He's saying basically, tomorrow, both wheat and barley, they'll be sold for next to nothing tomorrow. Wow. If you go back and read the story, and you see just how much a cab of manure, that's poop, was so expensive, people couldn't even afford it. I mean, you're thinking, why are you buying it? Things are bad if you're trying to buy that, okay? And but he says, tomorrow, wheat, and there's no wheat anywhere. Look, you're looking around, okay, and you're thinking, okay, nothing has grown at all for a couple of years now. You know, this is really not, but this is what God said, he said. Now notice, when God speaks, you have a choice. We know the story, verse 2. Then a Lord, on whose hand the king leaned, answered the man of God and said, behold, if the Lord would make windows of heaven, might this thing be? And he said, behold, now notice this, even if God were to open the windows of heaven. So he's saying, even if God himself, that means this guy is saying pretty much even God himself. Right now, the famine is so bad, it's affected heaven. God doesn't even have anything in heaven. Even if he were to open the windows of heaven, there is nothing that would come out. As if to say God himself is suffering, and even the angels out there, they're starving. Wow, this is beyond unbelief. This is bad. Notice this. And without hesitation, Elisha says, and he said, behold, you will see it with your eyes, but you will not eat of it. Why was this judgment that seems so harsh drawn? Simply because of the man on what he chose to say. And he's not just thinking it, he's actually speaking it. And we know that the power of example, especially when cast on a negative side, is almost irresistible. So he says that, and Elisha knows, wait a minute, you said that publicly. I'm going to say something to you publicly right now, that will overcome what you just said, because I know there are people listening to you. And the next day, verse 18, and it came to pass as the man of God had spoken. Now, what's happening here is that they're surrounded by all of these hosts of Syrians around about them, and they're going, whoa, wait a minute, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're surrounded here. We don't know what to do. But all of these people. And they do not know that God is waiting to bless them. Sometimes, guys, the circumstances that surround us that seem to be so unfriendly are actually God's way of delivering us. Sometimes God brings deliverance in the form of apparent enmity and evil circumstances. God works in mysterious ways. He does. His will to fulfill. This is amazing. Who'd have thought? They're surrounded by all these people, bad people. They're bad people that are waiting actually to destroy them. And you can see that with your eyes. And to top it off, you have nothing to eat. It's really bad. So then God causes a rumor, if you read the story. And those hosts surrounding them, they take off. Some of them even forget their horses. It's bad. You're supposed to get in your car and run away. It's bad if you leave your car and you're running on foot. It's bad. Okay. But when God scares you, my friends, he does a pretty good job. They take off and they leave all of this stuff in the way. And God, how is God going to report this? He's going to use lepers. These lepers. This story goes, it's so sweet. It's amazing. It's incredible. They come in and they're going out there, they eat, and they say, what are we doing, man? We got to go back and tell everybody. We'll never finish all this stuff. And man, when they made the report, the stampede that happened, remember the guy who said, this is not going to happen. And Elijah said, you're going to see it, but it won't happen. You know what the king does? This is not Elisha, so he doesn't blame Elisha. The king says, you know what? I want you to stand at the gate so that you can man the gate. The people running the stampede, actually, he fell down and they all trampled on him. He saw it, but he never ate it. All because of what he chose to do. To not believe, number one, and then to speak his unbelief and affect other people. This guy did not eat. Let me tell you something, my friends. I think we can see this pretty clearly. The power of your tongue is very, very strong. How are you going to use it in this year? How are you going to use it? When difficulties surround us, what are we going to say? Let me tell you what we should say. We should start praising God. Say, Lord, I praise you, because you know what? When a man's ways please you, even your enemies, even my enemies will get along with me. They will bring me a blessing. It's like that woman, you've heard the story, the woman in New York. They have stoops in New York, like you have little places out there where you get out in the house and you sit there, right, little, porch, call them stoops in New York. And this woman was out there and she was on her knees. Her cupboards were open. She was starving. She didn't have anything. She was up in hard times, but she was a Christian. And she's sitting there, her windows are open, and she opens the cupboards, she gets on her knees and she started to cry to the Lord. She said, Lord, I am hungry. I don't have anything. Look at my cupboards. I've opened them up and all that. And while she's praying out there loud, there are some of these guys, who hang around there. They do drugs in the day and all of that and everything, but in the night, so in the day, they're idle. And so they're sitting around out there just in the stoops. They do that. And they heard the woman praying, and they came in and looked at the window, and she was sitting there praying. She had nothing. And then they thought, well, let's have a little fun with this little woman. She's sitting there praying forever. Let's run and bring some food and put it over there. They knew that she was a praying woman, and when she started praying, she prayed for a long time. So they ran to the store next door and they bought some food and they put it in a bag, and then they hid. He says, wait, she's gonna think God gave it to her. The woman stopped praying. When she looked around, she could not. She went, opened the bag, she got down on her knees. She says, Lord, thank you. And the guys are cracking up, they're literally falling. And then she said this, the devil may have brought it, but I know you sent him. That really silenced them. They're like, what? What is he saying? So sometimes the circumstances we see that are against us are bringing us blessings, my friends. Let's learn to praise God. even in the face of that. I'm going to close with the book of Hebrews. Go with me there. Hebrews chapter 3, and beginning with verse 17. It says this, Hebrews 3:17. Turn there with me. 17 says this. Now, but with whom was he, God, grieved 40 years? Now, this is a reference, obviously, to the children of Israel we were just talking about. With whom was he grieved? Isn't it sad that we can grieve God? You and I can grieve God. He seems to be so big to us that there's nothing that we can do that will make him, that will not just, sometimes we look upset. No, we're talking about grieving him. That word is a very strong word. When you grieve someone, you're bringing sadness to them. This is the God who's never sinned, but we sinners can grieve him. He says, with whom was he grieved? Was it not with those who that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? You know the story. Those people, God said, you know what, I'm going to make you walk around the wilderness until every single one of you are dead. And except Caleb and Joshua, everybody else will die in the wilderness. And that's exactly what happened. And I need to tell you this. Caleb was 40 years old when he went to spy the land. 40 years later, he's a man of 80 years old. He's an old man. And in the book of Joshua, he approaches his old friend. Joshua now is the commander of the people, and he says, hey, Joshua, remember what God told me. He says, you know what? I know you're dividing the land now to the people. They're now in the promised land. You know what Caleb said at 80 years old? He said, I want you to give me the land of the giants. That's what I want. I want that. I don't want anything easy. I want the land of the giants. That's what I want. That place was called Hebron. Hebron. Caleb went out there and he routed all of those. There are 3 sons of Anak and their families. And their families of families and all of that. He routed a whole entire nation of 3 giants. He routed them at 80 years old. That place was called Hebron. This is where David the king was crowned king, and he ruled for 7 years before moving his capital, guess where? To the Jebusites. It's called Jebus, and he captured it and called it Jerusalem. Guys, this is what faith will do. It doesn't cut corners. It doesn't look for what's easy or, what's easy for me to do this year? What's the easiest ministry for me to do this year? That's what I'm going to do. What's the one that doesn't take any sacrifice? That's the one I'm going to do. No. If you want to be like Caleb, you're going to look at where the need is greatest and not where the obstacles are, because right there is where God is working, and where he's working is most marked. Now notice this here, verse 18, and to whom swear he that they should not enter into his rest, but to them that believe not? So now, notice how it ends. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. And what's the admonition? The last 2 verses I want to close with are the first 2 of chapter 4. Let us therefore fear. That's you and I. Lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of us should seem to come short of it. For unto us the gospel has been preached, as well as unto them. In other words, it's no way. God speaks in the same way. Let's not think that, he spoke to some and some, so it's so much more clear in them. No, it's been spoken to us in much the same way. In fact, God has never spoken as much as he speaks to us today, because we have all of their history, and plus we have what he's telling us today. Notice this, the accumulated light of centuries is shining on us. Now notice this, for unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them, but the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. My friends, need I say more? Need I say more? Faith comes by hearing, and a hearing by the word of the Lord. And earlier in that same chapter, Romans chapter 10, it says, with the heart or mind, man believes, and with the mouth, confession is made. Your belief will sooner or later be evident out of your mouth. Start guarding this year. Let's guard our thoughts. Let's guard what we say. Let's guard what we say, especially around others. Let's be ministers of encouragement. Ministers that encourage faith. People that when people come up to you, you're like a tree of life. People walk away with something. They munch on something that will do them good. Don't be the kind of person when people come to you, you don't even know, and somebody comes in. Yeah, and I know sometimes people come with bad things, bad news. Oh, did you hear about so and so? What are you going to do about that? Let's not be people who rejoice in iniquity, in bad news. Let's look for good things to rejoice at. Even if somebody is reported to you and you know that, look, let's think about what's good about that person. Learn to protect others. Be firemen that stop fires, not encourage them. Amen? This year, let's be like Joshua and Caleb, remembering this, that it is not in our own strength. The Bible says, the song says, not the labors of my hands can fulfill the law's demands. Could my zeal no respite know? Could my tears forever flow? All for sin could not atone. Thou must save, and thou alone. That wonderful song called Rock of Ages is what I would like for us to close with today. And I'm going to take a moment here and prepare myself. We're going to, so that we can close with that song, and I'm going to look for it because I didn't have it. And then we're going to close with it. It's a beautiful song that talks about, it was inspired by Moses up there on a mountain when he said, God, I want to see your glory. And God said to him,